American foreign policy seems to be on the same trajectory.
Yeah.
If I'm saying it right. It still seems to be one of the most messed up imperialistic mindsets out there.
Would you say that, like Nikki Haley, it's past its prime?
It's way past its prime.
Her ideas are past their prime, and she's past her prime. Sorry.
You say she's past her prime, but the people watching that
Childbearing
GOP,
years. That's when I trust you to run.
Most people said she won the debate. A lot of people said she won the debate. A lot of people said she finished second. A lot of people appreciated the way she went after Vivek on ending the Ukraine war, because he was one of the only guys on the whole stage that said, let's end it.
Okay, wait a minute, though. Who said that? Just news people?
News people, voters. They had the thing where you can go in and text and vote.
Hey, Nikki
people
Haley.
watching the debate.
Yeah.
Most of your GOP voters out there anyways still have this kind of American police state mindset where they justify what's happening. And we do such a great job demonizing these countries or these leaders that we get away with this kind of Monroe Doctrine kind of mentality.
That's got to be like 60 and up.
I think it's, dude, wait, with that show that you were on with your two friends, even the one dude said, he goes, oh, come on, Kurt, some of us are fighting for truth and liberty around the world.
Dude. Yo,
he ain't close to 60.
He's like 50.
But anyways, people just getting out of school today.
Great.
People getting out of school today will have that empire education where they're taught that American foreign policy is that of us going around like Captain America, spreading truth, democracy, and freedom everywhere we go.
I remember when, because like I would never even bother to, and you know about all this stuff America has done growing up. You're like, but we're not like the worst. You know, like there's a balance I have in my head. So, like, when we went to Iraq, I'd be like, well, yes, but they did whatever. They tortured whoever, did whatever, but Saddam Hussein's bad.
Yeah, he's a modern-day Hitler, they would say.
Putin's a murderer.
Yes.
We have murderers at home.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. The newest guy on the target is Mexico and AMLO. And even though he's he's finishing up his term, his successor is going to come in.
The energy stuff, was he not giving us what was he holding?
Lithium. But we'll get to that. I thought
battery making.
We need listen, the fourth industrial revolution is not about the fight for oil anymore and energy so much. It's about the fight for rare minerals like lithium, cobalt, nickel. So wherever those are at, whatever country, look for the United States to demonize that country, demonize that leader, so we can go in there.
I think the great Elon Musk said, we'll coup whoever we want. Get over it.
We'll coup who the F we want to coup about Bolivia. Remember that. And that's Evo Morales, who had a huge approval rating from his people all across the board. Now, Mexico being on the target, who are they going to blame? They're going to blame the cartels, right? They're not going to talk.
Dude, I've been seeing stuff about, these cartels, we might have to go in there.
Okay.
I've been seeing that for a while, yeah.
Donald Trump. Now, listen, the first time I heard it, Kurt, I was doing a election integrity event in Florida, in West Palm Beach. And there was an old DEA guy who also worked for the Border Patrol who was going to Donald Trump to try to convince him to label the cartel as an enemy foreign combatant, meaning the United States military can then go fight them on their own soil anytime they want, without the permission from the government, without the permission from the leader of that government.
Tom Clancy already made a book about this, starring Harrison Ford in the movie version.
Which one?
Clear and Present Danger.
That was my favorite one.
These cartels represented clear and present danger. It's all about a president who's way out of line.
Yes. Except...
And a brave CIA guy has to set the president straight on this bullshit.
Except in that particular movie, they kind of put it as like a lone shark dealing with the CIA, or the cartels. It wasn't like embedded, from what we know, the way the cartels have been working with the CIA, and we found this out, Iran-Contra. Now, the GOP debate the other day, this came up. Donnie Tinyhands, whatever his name is, said this about 3 months ago. He was convinced by that gentleman and these other people to go in and list the cartels as an enemy combatant. Well, they asked Ron DeSantis, who I've been saying for quite some time is going to be worse on foreign policy, especially when it comes to Latin America, than Donald Trump.
He'll open up new markets with DeSantis.
Dude will invade Cuba tomorrow if he becomes president. He wanted to have a day, Kurt, honoring the guy who killed Che Guevara in Florida. He wanted to have a freaking holiday. I shit you not.
Oh, that's like a real
Gusano thing to do.
Yeah, that's all Cubans down there are gonna like it, and it's such a nonsense. Like the guy declared, "We will not have electric car day here."
Yeah. Well, I said I wouldn't use the term gusano because
I don't know
gusano
what
is
that
just,
is.
it's Spanish for worm, but it's what Castro called the people who pretty much betrayed Cuba and went with the Western mentality and sided with the West. The other day,
I don't have strong Cuba feelings, by the way.
well, I do because I go there. The other day on the debate stage, look what happened. Day one, Kurt, DeSantis is going to take care of it.
So as president, would you support sending U.S. Special Forces over the border into Mexico to take out fentanyl labs, to take out drug cartel operations? Would you support that kind of American military use?
Yes, and I will do it on day one.
Oh.
Here's the thing. The cartels are killing.
Do you think that this day one, unlike the Roe v. Wade, codifying Roe v. Wade, do you think this day one will get done?
It's more likely that this will get done because it's not a domestic issue within the United States. It's a foreign policy issue. And for some reason, when it comes to regime change or interference, the United States finds a way to get in there and get it done.
Can you imagine when we have like troops in there and we have to like occupy it, how corrupt it's going to get in the middle of like, those Zetas, that was a crack group that we trained.
Yeah.
Like special forces training, like, hey, we could be the biggest cartel around.
Well, the CIA works with the cartels, and we know this. We know this from Iran-Contra. They don't do anything out without the say-so of the CIA, the cartels, that is. So it's just a bunch of crap. If you really want to take on the cartels, you look to Langley. You don't look to Mexico. This is interference. This is invasion. This is bullshit. Listen to the rest of this.
Cartels are killing tens of thousands of our fellow citizens. You want to talk about a country in decline? You have the cartels controlling a lot of part of your southern border. We have to reestablish the rule of law, and we have to defend our people. The President of the United States has got to use all available powers as Commander-in-Chief to protect our country and to protect the people. So when they're coming across, yes, we're going to use lethal force. Yes, we reserve the right to operate. How many more tens of thousands are we going to let to die? I am sick. I've met angel moms throughout this country. I met a lady in Texas named Tracy, and her son took one Percocet that was laced with fentanyl, immediately died. That is happening all across this country because of the poison that they are bringing in. So as president, would I use force? Would I treat them as foreign terrorist organizations? You're darn right I would.
Vice President Pence.
Oh, that's swear.
I got a question, Kurt, because
Darn right you do.
Well, you have a lot of insight to this, too, and we talk about this all the time.
For being a junkie?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't say. I would say what's the proper term?
Isn't it weird that that same guy, if you're a drug addict in San Francisco, you're scum of the earth and you should be put in jail, but somehow there's another drug addict somewhere else who makes Ron DeSantis want to go kill Mexicans?
Yep.
Isn't that weird? Like, he doesn't want to kill Mexicans over the people dead in San Francisco over on fentanyl, but he does want to kill from someplace else. That's weird. It's very weird. I thought he wanted to throw drug addicts in jail, but now he wants to go kill Mexicans because drug addicts are killing themselves. That's what he wants to do?
Because they're commies, Jimmy. They're socialist countries,
and they're that, but that is why.
But so this
he didn't say that though.
This doesn't sound like a coherent policy. This sounds like button pushing and dog whistling. That's all this sounds like.
I have a question.
So that's all. Then that's all. DeSantis got a couple of things right on COVID, and everything else this guy shits the bed on it. He can't even smile.
Well, we have that when he tries the smile picture. And let's be honest, too. He didn't get COVID right in the beginning. And it wasn't until he got a new Surgeon General that changed his mind. But the question I have for you, gentlemen. Go ahead, you have. What's the question?
So is the finishing the wall just not even on? Now it's gone beyond finishing the wall to with the soldiers on the wall pushing inward to Mexico. Well, he didn't even bring up. He was like, it's coming over the border. That was what was going to stop the constant fentanyl. But now we got to attack.
Yes.
They have an open, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I got from Bobby Kennedy's reporting, Craig, was that Joe Biden has an open border policy. And we have to guess why. And my guess is because they want to have the private prisons full.
Or they want to have cheap labor.
He's cheap labor in private prisons. Yeah. He's fighting right now. Joe Biden is fighting to keep private detention centers for immigrants open in New Jersey. This is why would he do that? He's doing that because he's in the pocket of the private prison industry. So that's why he probably has the border open right now. Why else would he have the border open right now?
Well, it's, not even so much that the border's open. It's that everybody's given a court date, but they never come back to get for that court date.
But he won't secure the border.
He won't. But
so that is the big problem.
That is one of the big problems, but it's also...
It's not the big problem?
Well, I think the biggest problem is the fact that the people are coming because it's a result of our foreign policy.
That is the big problem.
That's the root of the problem.
Okay,
in
lieu of that, let's say you're an asshole that doesn't care about that, which he is. You would think you would at least put the fence up.
Right.
When they say law and order, they're not going to alleviate poverty, but they usually do at least crack heads on one end. They don't do any of the things as if it's like, we want this way.
Well, we're going to get to that because they all go behind, like, we're going to complete the border that the border that Donald Trump didn't finish. Krispy Kreme is going to say it very next. I'm going to bring him on.
Who's Krispy Kreme?
Christie.
Oh my God, I can't keep up with the people's nicknames. I didn't know his name was Krispy.
Come on, just take a
Kreme.
guess.
He was laughing hysterical at Gerald Salente's every single nickname for each person.
Oh my God.
You like that. But here's the question I have first, before we move on, because he's talking about fentanyl, right? They're using fentanyl as an excuse to go after the cartels. Mm-hmm. They also use it as an excuse to blame China, which we see too as well. But here's my question to you, and I'm going to go to you first on this, Kurt, because you have some experience with this, and I've talked to Steve about this. How did the United States create so many customers of fentanyl?
Oh.
Where did it come from in the first place?
Okay, wait. So fentanyl... When I first heard of that, it wasn't the big thing. It was a thing that, like, you knew they gave it to cancer patients, and pro wrestlers were legendary. Like, they would lick the patches. Mm-hmm. And so that when I stopped taking OxyContin, somebody had given me fentanyl patches. Okay? And I was like, and I want to have withdrawals. Okay? And I was like looking up every possible way to possibly do this. Mm-hmm. I couldn't find anything. I looked up people's stories. People were saying, like, I poked a pin and got a little drop of it to put in my bowl. And I almost died. Do not go. So I was like, all right, it's too much of a risk.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, like a few years later, all of a sudden fentanyl's like in the Coke and every drug. The Oxycontins, like when I did Oxycontin, you were getting Oxycontin.
Not anymore.
You weren't getting fake. And so the new thing is a flood of fentanyl. Kind of like how George H.W. Bush lowered the price of Coke single-handedly. When the CIA brought that Coke in, you had to have money to do it. And all of a sudden it was already in the cheapest possible form. That was a real breakthrough deployment. So suddenly fentanyl, that was a thing, like you knew somebody who had a relative that died and they would give you the patches, is how people would get. All of a sudden it's in everything where you don't even want it. So I don't know what the hell that is. I mean, it sounds like a familiar story.
And so the way that we have this fentanyl crisis, it was created by the Sacklers, and they got everybody hooked on OxyContin.
There you go.
And they told everybody it was safe and it's not addictive, and they knew they were lying. And doctors, just like during COVID, didn't push back, didn't do their own research, just repeated what Big Pharma told them and started getting everybody hooked on OxyContin. So that's coming from Big Pharma, but DeSantis will never be angry about that. Mm-hmm. He's angry at Mexicans,
small pharma,
and China. Yeah. But when it suits him, he's also angry at the drug addict in San Francisco.
You're saying he's not really concerned with the fentanyl deaths and more concerned with doing a nice invasion of...
That's exactly right.
But he's also saying the
fact
that...
Those are strong charges, Jimmy.
Yeah, but he's also saying the fact that we know that Big Pharma supports, finances Joe Biden, finances, all these goons. And they'll never point to Big Pharma as the problem for why we have so many fentanyl addicts in this country.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're a comedian. I worked in the restaurant business. The chances are we saw Percocet, OxyContin, might have come around recreational. But most of the people were given an opioid from their doctor. The man in the white suit gave them that. And then when they pulled the rug underneath from them, they had to go out in the streets and find it. And that's where fentanyl came into play. Do you know that, what's his name? Tom Petty thought he was getting Percocet for his back, and it turned out to be fentanyl?
No kidding.
Yeah. That's,
Prince. Prince died of fentanyl.
Mac Miller. These guys thought they were getting opioids.
Mac Miller.
And so people are mixing it in. It's like so cheap. To get and make, there's so much less overhead to just, they're like as unscrupulous as Big Pharma, a lot of these guys.
Yes, they are. Turns out, Your average drug dealer is almost as unscrupulous as Big Pharma.
Yeah.
Well, some of
Mac
them
Miller died right around the corner, by the way, from.
Yeah.
And by the way, too, as well, from what I understand, I'm not an expert, I'm not a chemist, but what I heard, that fentanyl is a lot easier to make than speed and crank and all those other things, that it's going to be easily be made in the United States, that they're not going to have to make it over there. And any drug dealer, any smart drug dealer is going to set up shop where his customers are, so we don't have to transport it.
Look, celebrity deaths, here's the thing I noticed from years in New York is, because I knew a dude that had like the worst drug, his drugs like sucked, but you'd have famous people in town hanging out with him. And I was like, why are these people, he has the worst of whatever you're looking for? And it was like, oh, because he's probably giving him a better cut of whatever. Yeah. And also, if you're on the road a lot or something and you're a druggie, you're like, and you know, oh, I can just call this guy. That's what they like, is the convenience. Yeah. So you're not necessarily getting some drug dealer that you know, and you're more likely to get this kind of unscrupulous, you know, whatever. Their chances are higher, I think, than a lot of like, you know, farm to table drug addicts.
Well, I'm glad you used addicts.
So what does Chris Krispy Kreme say?
Same thing, same mentality. Take a listen. Once again, got to find a way to manufacture consent for us to go over in there. Blame the Chinese, blame the cartels. Everybody except us. We can't take accountability for our own country's actions.
Isn't that always how it went?
I want to move to an issue that a lot of Republican voters in particular care about, which is immigration. On the debate stage, a couple of your opponents seem to suggest that they would send troops into Mexico to fight the drug cartels. Governor DeSantis said he would deploy U.S. Special Forces. Do you think that that is a viable solution to the fentanyl crisis? Wouldn't Mexico view that as an act of war?
I think they would. And look, I see it also as an act of war by China to be sending the precursor chemicals to these Mexican drug cartels in order to make the fentanyl that they're sending up into the country. Look, I think there are ways to get this done. I think we have to use our intelligence assets. We have to be much tougher and stronger at the border to prevent people from coming through. Finish the wall that Donald Trump never finished, only built 52 miles of in 4 years. We need to make sure that we put National Guard at the border to stop those folks from coming across the border with fentanyl. I think the invasion of Mexico issue is one that sounds good on a debate stage, but I think if any of them tried to implement that part of it as president, they would find it's much more complicated and that they're making it sound.
Well, wouldn't it be illegal to have the National Guard serving in a law enforcement capacity at the border?
So the same people who condemn Putin for invading Ukraine to stop the shelling of the Russian speakers in the Donbass. That people don't know. That's why they think so. Americans, Kurt, think that Putin just woke up one day because he's an evil maniac and decided to invade Ukraine for no reason whatsoever
to expand the Soviet Union.
And so these people are saying. The same people who are saying that Putin's a thug and a murderer for going into Donbass to stop the shelling of the Russian speakers there are the same people saying we should invade our neighbor, even though our neighbor's not threatening us in any way. And we're the ones who created this fentanyl problem, and we're the ones who created the immigration problem with our foreign policy on Central and South America and our drug war and everything else. And so again, but most people are just fucking morons, and they just believe what they hear on the TV. And Putin's a thug, and we're good guys because we're going to get the bad Mexicans.
Yeah, I like that Chris Christie was like, hang on, we can't just do that. We have to look up if Mexico is considered sovereign.
And by the way,
the worst kind of nation.
It's important to point out that Chris Christie is saying this because Chris Christie was the one who talked about his friend dying from opioids and really kind of brought a lot of information to the Republican Party about this crisis. But here he is when he gets a chance to go invade in the country. He'll turn on the drop of a dime.
He was not for just invading, he said. Am I mishearing him? He said that's not so easy to just go invade Mexico.
Well, technically how you do it, you got to know how to do it.
He's talking about, that's why I said they're not even talking about building the wall. He said that. Like, he's like, we got to do it. But the other guy, who just paid for
he said Trump didn't do it. He only built 54 miles. So what is his answer to this question? That isn't that against the law to use the military for law enforcement, which is what he's suggesting.
I'll rewind it just a little bit so we can hear.
Okay, that's what he's suggesting.
Wouldn't it be illegal to have the National Guard serving in a law enforcement capacity at the border?
No, Nancy, look, I think that what we're doing is protecting the border. They would be working with Customs and Border Patrol folks hand in hand. They can effectuate the arrests, but you obviously need greater force there to prevent them from coming over the border in the first place. And so
he just said, no, I'll just pretend they're not doing the thing they're doing. And then I'll pretend they're not doing law enforcement and they'll just be on the border. Yeah. And so he's just talking now.
But he's also bragging the fact that he can actually get it done. The other ones want to say it on a debate stage, but I know how to exactly get it done.
He knows how to get the military doing law enforcement in a way that skirts the Constitution.
Exactly.
That's what he just said.
That's what I appreciate.
Exactly what he said. 100%.
We can violate the spirit of the Constitution and skirt it. And
I think that's very respectful of him to at least find a way to skirt it instead of just not acknowledging it at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's what we're gonna do. Let's get to Vivek real quick, because Vivek, another guy, when it comes to, and one of the only people on the stage, the debate stage the other day, that wants to end the war in Ukraine. But listen to him here.
Here's how we're going to do it. We will use the military to close the holes in the Swiss cheese of a southern border that we now have down there. That's how we actually solve the problem. The wall has not been enough. We have to use the military to seal the border. That, I think, solves the influx of the migrants. The influx of 14,000 people entering this country daily, illegally. It's 50,000 plus deaths, probably more per year, resulting from fentanyl illegally crossing that southern border. And then also eliminate the incentives. No federal funding for sanctuary cities. That's disastrous. Not a dime of foreign aid to Mexico or Guatemala or Belize or Nicaragua. Really? I have no patience for it. We're done with it until we have worked with them effectively to close Mexico's own southern border, actually.
Do you think that's even a possibility because the cartels are so intertwined with government now?
Well, here's what I will say. You're right. Mexico needs to regain its own sovereignty. So here's the steps I would take. First, seal our own southern border with our military. That, I think, is solvable. Next is Mexico and these other countries, they're not going to get aid until they actually regain their own sovereignty.
What?
They have their own sovereignty. It's us.
I know.
It's us.
These guys are such clowns. I know people think Vivek is some kind of truth teller or something. He's such a scammer, establishment bullshitter. He's a fucking puppet to Wall Street in the military-industrial complex, just like all of them. He's nothing. I'd let if he wants to come on the show, let's get him.
Yeah.
Come see us live on tour. We're going to be in Toledo, Detroit, St. Louis, Tampa, Boca Raton, Orlando, Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Bloomington, Illinois. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.